everyone have some sense of this before getting started? How many of you have set up sites that use relationships between nodes before? So when you're creating a content type, how many of you have used a field that allows you to refer to another node? Okay, most of you. How many of you have used contextual filters with your views? All right. And how many of you have used relationships in views? All right. So this will be review for some of you then, and for the rest of you, I hope that this provides a basic introduction to how you can leverage time. So I did that. And then the course, if you look at this, there's the title, just the title of the course. The course number, I'm not actually not doing anything with that. Prerequisites, so these refer to other courses. There's the instructor, which refers to a faculty member, a TA, which refers to a student, and I ended up not using the required text field. This was originally going to be a far more ambitious site, and I realized there's plenty to demo even if you keep it fairly simple. So that's why the extraneous field. So far, I've set up some really basic views. Here's a list of the faculty. You can click on them. This is just sort of a view that uses the grid display, lists all the faculty, sorts them using their last name. If you click on one, you can see the faculty member. There's a list of the courses, and this is just a table with the title and the instructor. And then the students are grouped by their graduation year. So let's go back to a faculty page here and see if we can make their page a little bit more interesting. So let's create a view to display the courses that the faculty member is teaching. And for this, we don't actually need a contextual, anything besides a contextual filter for the most simple example. But then we'll pull in some relationships and make it a little more complicated. When you're working with contextual filters in views, one thing that you need to do is just jot down somewhere the value of kind of an example thing that you want to look at. So in this case, we want to be able to show all of this faculty member's courses, but you need to know sort of what the node ID is for that faculty member's page in order to be able to actually see anything in the preview. So if you hover over the edit icon here, you'll see at the bottom it'll say node / whatever / edit, and that's sort of an easy way to get to and jot down the node ID for a faculty member or for anything that you're trying to use as an example. So let's go to views here. Add a new view. And we'll call this courses. So we're going to want to show content, that's right, of type course. We don't need a page, we're just going to create a block and then we'll stick that block on the faculty member's page. So we'll say courses here. We want an unformatted list of, let's say, fields. We can start with title as well, fine. Let's just show everything. So for everything, you put 0, somewhat counterintuitively perhaps. And then you do continue and edit. And what you get out of the box here is a list of every single course, which isn't quite what you're going for here. What you want is you want this list of every single course filtered only to show the ones for that particular faculty member. So to do that, you can add a contextual filter here. And what we're going to say is we want to look for data in instructor. So instructor, we'll add this contextual filter. Now how you configure this is maybe not totally obvious the first time you come across it. There's provide a default value, and fixed value. Here you could say, we can get what we want if we do this fixed value. We know that the faculty member that we're looking at has the node ID of 7. So if we say the fixed value is 7, that will actually show all of the courses taught by this one instructor. Now, the problem is that this is going to be a block that will show these 2 courses no matter where it appears on the site. If we create this block and put it on all faculty pages, it will just show this one faculty member's courses, which is not what we want. We want this block to dynamically update with the information for whatever faculty member we happen to be looking at the moment. So this is where we want to say provide default value. Strangely enough, this is still correct, but it's not a fixed value. We want content ID from URL. And at first you might be concerned about this because if you've set up your site in a pretty normal way, chances are you're using path auto, and that value actually doesn't appear in the URL anywhere that you would see it. You don't go to faculty/node/7. There's no 7 in the URL. But this is more of what the unaliased URL would be. So even though the content ID doesn't actually appear in the URL, it'll be okay. So we'll hit apply, all displays. Now we see nothing, which is slightly unnerving. So either things have gone terribly wrong, or we've forgotten to put in a contextual filter to actually feed it a value to sort of see what the results are. In this case, we'll put in 7. We'll update our preview. And here we have our 2 courses here. I think 8 is also a faculty member. We'll see in a moment. Yep, so this will get us a different course. So this is good. We have a dynamically updating block here of courses for faculty members. Any questions on this so far? More or less on this. Okay, so let's just save this, finish what we started, and then we can get back to something a little bit more complicated. Let's go to blocks. We will add this to the content, save, and if we refresh here, we'll see the faculty number, we'll see the courses, it's all good. So with that, you don't actually need any relationships at all. But you can make this a little bit more interesting and complicated if you start adding relationships. So let's edit the view. Now let's say we don't just want the courses, we also want the students who are enrolled in this course. Now remember, we've already narrowed down the content that we're displaying here to just courses. So being able to pull in information from student, which is a different content type altogether, is going to require some relationships. And relationships essentially take the node reference fields you have and sort of create a link between whatever you're looking at and then a set of relationships, and then the things that are referred to in those relationships are the things that are doing the referring. And then you can pull in data from nodes that don't even appear on your list. So in this case, we want to pull in data from student nodes, even though what we're displaying here is course nodes. So we want the students. So to add a relationship, we're going to need to pull in this relationship for courses. Now you may see here that there's courses and courses reverse, and this is a tricky point that I often get screwed up in as I'm thinking through these, and I have to think to myself, do I want a relationship or a reverse relationship? A relationship is if you let's say we are let's say we're looking at students as our main focus rather than courses, and you want to display information about the students, but you also want to display who is going to be teaching the courses that the student has enrolled in. Now remember, course is something that's actually part of the student content type. When you're editing a student content type, you actually put in what the courses are. And in those cases, you use a relationship. If the data actually exists in the sort of content type that you're focused on, you use a relationship to be able to pull in data about the course into your view. The reverse relationship is if that data doesn't exist in the content type you're looking at. So in this case, if you just pull up a course content type, and let me do this in another tab here so we can see. If you're looking at the course itself, there are no fields relating to what students are in it. From the point of view of the course, other things are outside it, pointing to it, but the course itself doesn't know anything about that. And so that's where the reverse relationship comes in. So in this case, because we're listing courses, and the course itself doesn't know anything about what students are in it, that's not part of the course content type, we're going to want the reverse relationship. So let's say reverse. So what this should do is this should point to, you should be able to use this to pull in information about nodes that are referring to the course. So you might notice down here that already things are starting to look a little bit strange. You have instead of 2 different things, we have 3 repeats of this and 1 repeat of this. And the reason it's doing this is because there are 3 students enrolled in this course and 1 in this course. And you can fix this through aggregation later. But it's, you can see at the very least things are changing here. To actually start pulling in data now that we've established this relationship, we will say content title. We will specify the relationship is field course, and we will optimistically call this student because that's what we hope is going to show up. One of the things with views and relationships is don't hesitate to make your view look terribly messy to begin with. If you have duplicates, it's okay. Put in labels and titles just to sort of help keep straight what you're doing, because sometimes you'll end up with really weird values in there and you have to sort of debug and figure out how to get the value you want back in there. And it helps if you just don't have a bunch of fields listing there and you're not really sure what's supposed to be what. Okay, so I know from having made this that these are in fact student names, and so we're good. This would be more problematic the way we've configured this right now if there were content types besides students that were using this content courses field to refer to the course. But fortunately, only this content courses field only exists in students, so we'll only be getting students there, and that's good. Are people more or less following so far? I don't know if are sort of. Okay. All right.
Actually, kind of. So the part where you were typing stuff in, right? That's where I tend to get lost. You just kind of got to know.
Did I? Oh, the part where I was adding the relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I haven't done a whole lot of typing, thankfully. Yeah. So to some extent, you have to know. To some extent, you have to make a decent guess about what you're trying to get at here. So the relationship is what you use here is a node reference field, and this is a node reference field that points to the thing that you're trying to display, which is why it's a reverse.
And you named it field courses.
Yeah. yeah, I mean, having built the site, like, I know what it's
Okay.
called. If you haven't built the site or are sort of coming in and kind of have to figure it out, just mess around in the content types in this manage fields area here. Probably want to do that.
And you were saying if you had another content type, say, room, that had a field courses,
Yeah, and you use
Field.
that same field for assigning a room to a course and a student to a course, you get both of those showing up here.
got it.
So yeah, this is I guess one thing, you know, to consider when you're actually designing your fields and your content types, that using the same field in multiple content types is sometimes a good thing, and sometimes it can really screw with your views afterwards if it doesn't really mean the same thing in one place and it does in another. Yeah.
So in that case, just to clarify, so you'd have like a room content type and a student content type, is there a way to put a filter on the relationship so that it only shows you things in the student content type? Like if you're reusing the field in the room and the student, is there a way in this view to filter it out so you only, even if you're reusing the field, you only see the students?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure I've ever gotten myself into that jam, and I'm not actually sure. Do you know?
What was the question?
If you had reused a field so that you had two content types that had a field courses that referred to a course, a room and student, is there a way in this view to filter it so that you only see students that have a relationship to this course and not rooms that have a relationship to this course?
I believe so. Under filter criteria, you should be able to add a filter based on the relationship.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so with the thing that we saw here with the fields, where there's this relationship toggle down, that applies equally well to filters. Let's see again. Just an off paper. Yeah, there you go.
So you just have to name the relationship something sensible when you created it.
It helps. And actually, you can you can do totally fluency things too. So let's say let's just be fancy here and say that maybe the courses the student lists are in order of their priority for that course, and we want to see all the courses that are only is this? There should be one of these. Oh, I think so. Let's say we only want to show courses that are like the second choice of students. There's also a field for the delta value of multi-value fields, where you can actually put in that you want it to be the second. And I'm trying to figure out why this is not showing up.
You didn't choose the one with the delta though. When you chose
No, I feel like there's another site that I've done where I feel like you can choose which delta value as part of the relationship. In any case, we can get back to this later if we get through the rest of it. But at the very least, there is a way that you can add. Maybe it's a normal relationship. No, I'm confused. Okay, so it doesn't work on reverse relationships, which does make sense because we're talking about everything that's pointing to something rather than kind of the values of a specific field. With a regular relationship rather than a reverse one, you can actually say what the delta value is. So rather than pulling in, I mean this relationship doesn't really make sense in this context. So we're looking at courses, so we need the reverse one. But if we were creating a block that would appear on the student page, and let's say we only wanted to show like the second course that they had enrolled in, you could choose delta 2 rather than delta all, and it will only return one value, and that's sort of the second one that was in the list. And I specified the 4 options. Any other questions before I start making this example even more messy?
So if I were trying to write a block diagram that said faculty, students, and course, and wanted to point arrows
No,
Or other things are pointing into it?
students are pointing into the course.
Okay, and faculty?
So if we pull up our content types here,
I realize I don't see it in the
yeah, oh, so a course, courses can also point out to faculty, they can point out to students, and they can also point to themselves. So some courses are prerequisites for other courses.
Well, you got it.
Yeah. A bunch of things point to faculty, but faculty don't point to anything. And students, it looks like students point to faculty as their advisor, and they point to courses. All right. Any other questions before we start adding more? Oh,
So
yes.
if the arrows are pointing out, then in order to use that, which is course, you need to use a reverse.
If you have arrows pointing into you, then it's a reverse. If you have arrows pointing out to something else, it's a regular relationship.
So it depends on your perspective. If you're
Yes.
sitting on a course perspective, it's different from whether you're sitting on the student perspective.
Does that help?
So I'm just trying to,
Yeah, sure.
you know, do block diagram thing here. So pointing in, arrows pointing in is what you use a reverse.
Yeah.
See,
Okay. So let's take things a step further, and let's say we want to pull in other information about the students that doesn't exist as part of the course list. So we can add any other field here that is part of the student content type using the same field courses relationship. So I know we have GPA. We want to see the GPA of all the students in the course. We just use the same field courses relationship and apply, and that will just show up here corresponding to the students. You can get more complicated from there. You can jump to things like, I mean, you can add the advisor of any student who's enrolled in the course fairly easily, just by doing the same thing using the field courses relationship.
I have a question
Yeah.
actually, because I noticed that you're doing a different thing than I've done when I've done relationships. Is I always use that relationships thing that's built into views to create relationships and don't set them up in the content type. Whereas I noticed that you just were doing relationships to no relationships that were set up in the content type without setting up the one in views.
I was going back to what we had set up or what I had set up previously in the content type. I mean, don't you need something between the content types to, like in the content types, in order to be able to access it from views? I mean,
I haven't. I've done lots of things just setting up just in views and never going to the content type. I'm not sure what kind of crime I'm committing.
oh, I mean,
How would a course know what student or faculty are related to it if there is no link in the content?
you do have like node references though in your content types, right?
Well, I do it with taxonomies.
Okay, yeah, you can do it with taxonomies too.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't in this example used taxonomies as part of the relationship, but, I mean, this is basically focused on node references, but you can use taxonomy terms as relationships.
Okay. I just didn't understand within views the because it seems like for the one you were just doing it, you didn't need to put a relationship in there, that you were just using, so I was confused as to how those similarly named things interact. But I don't mean to
Oh, no,
distract from
let me, so what we did here was, we created a list of courses, and then we used relationships to pull in data about students who had enrolled in that course, or essentially information from a content type that is not the course that points to the course using a node relationship, or a node reference. Too many R words here. Does that?
So I think a node reference is one thing that will permit you to add a relationship based on that, just as a taxonomy is one thing that will allow you to create a relationship with views based on that existing already on the content type.
Yeah, right, because a taxonomy, when you add a taxonomy field to a content type, it is a term reference. So it is a reference similarly to a node reference.
So I guess the work though, for each of those nodes, you went into the individual nodes and set up the reference that they pointed to, one node at a time, right?
Yeah, well, as I mean, the same way you would like add taxonomy terms to a node, it's just part of the node content. And sort of by putting in that data, you get access to these relationships, to be able to pull data between these different content types. Yeah.
So, I don't mean to sidetrack, but would all this also apply to entity reference as opposed to node reference?
Yeah, I know node reference better and can sort of whip things up in a weekend a little bit faster, but entity reference works the same way. I think they have a slightly different title for what relationship comes up. There's also more things you can do with entity reference. I believe, I mean, there's a reason it's the like successor module to node reference. But yeah, it should work essentially the same way.
Yeah, and it's probably my fault that on the announcement, I put entity references because I wasn't like corresponding really quickly with Quinn, and I just decided, oh, she's talking about entity references, but at least we're in the same ballpark. But I have a question, actually, probably just something I missed. That last relationship we added to advisor.
That wasn't a relationship, that's a field.
Or the last field we added to pull in advisor. So advisors would be linked to students, right?
Advisor is a field, advisor is a node reference field in the student content type that points to a faculty member.
Right. Okay, so it points out from student to a faculty member. And when you pulled in that field, you chose field courses as your relationship. And field courses,
that's what gets your information from the student node that's pointing to the course.
I can see how field courses would pull in a student name because a student is related directly to a course, but it seems to me like we're going one step removed with a student then points to. So, but basically the student content type has a field which is populated with the name of their advisor. Is that how it works?
Exactly.
Okay, that's.
Now the next part is where it gets really tricky, where we can actually add a relationship that has a relationship. So now let's add a relationship to the advisor, and I think this might be where you were thinking this was going. So there is this field as part of the student content type that's advisor, and let's say we want to pull in information about the student's advisor, or let's say we even just want to pull in the advisor's name. Now obviously if we just want to pull in the advisor's name, we can treat it like any other field, just like the GPA. We added the field for the student's GPA, added the relationship so it pulls from the student content type. We can also add the student's advisor this way. But let's pretend that the faculty content type is more interesting than it actually is, and we want to pull in data from that, other than what is stored specifically in the student content type, which is like the name and nothing else. So if we use advisor, this time advisor is something that is in the student content type, which at this point is sort of what we're focusing on. And we can just use a regular relationship rather than a reverse relationship. So we'll add that. But remember that in order to get to the context of pulling in stuff from the student content type, you need this field courses relationship. So you're assigning a relationship to your relationship in order to get this relationship. Yeah, and you can chain things actually arbitrarily long this way, and this is how you can get some really amazing and also very messy views. So as we showed before here, in an imaginary world where a student has 2 advisors, you could set the delta value here so that you're pulling in either the first advisor or the second advisor of the student, and then doing different things with each of them. There's only 1 advisor in this case, so you can just leave it as all. But I have done fancy things with this delta before in actually creating bibliographies. So, when you're doing it, basically any bibliography format, the first author is last name, comma, first name, then subsequent authors are first name, last name, and then if there's more than 4, you have to, different things happen. So this delta value can actually be really useful in reality. So let's just say we want to list the advisor again in a more complicated way. We're going to go just the same way that we used here, content title with the field courses relationship in order to get the student's name. Let's do the same thing to get the advisor's name. So we'll say content. We will add our relationship advisor and do that. Apply. So here we have the advisor and the advisor in the complicated way. Fortunately, the data is showing up to be the same. If the data was not showing up to be the same, then we would have a problem. But all is well here. So is everyone more or less okay with how that worked there? If there was more interesting information in the faculty field, we could pull in things like their latest book title. But since it's just the blurb, I figured just for now.
Can you go back to the settings for that field? That.
This one?
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, so I mean, all we did was toggle down and added the new relationship that we added. The messiness inherent in the fact that this relationship itself has a relationship, thankfully is not sort of necessary to involve at this point. Once you've established the relationship with its settings, you can just refer to it like any other relationship. And it's pretty easy.
So it's kind of saying we're, you have this, which is the student, and go over here to this to find this piece that's within that.
Yes, it's actually one step more complicated than that, because remember, our filter here is course. So our first pass is course. And then we're saying, okay, take the title of the course, look for all of the nodes that are using the relationship or using the field courses to refer to the course. Now pull in some data from all of those nodes. One of the fields within those nodes itself points to something else. And so just kind of jump over to that other content type and pull in something from there. Yeah, I wish there was a whiteboard here, I would draw it, but I'm not very good with drawing anyway, so it's probably better that you use your imagination. Any other questions before we try a different example? All right. So let's look at another example here with courses. So as part of the course content type already, we have a field that says, what the prerequisites for the course are. But what we don't have is the reverse of that, so saying that this course is a prerequisite for courses X, Y, and Z. So that's what we're gonna try to do here. So we're gonna show content of type course, as with relationships, we'll ultimately be showing other things, but we're gonna start with course. The block, and format a list of fields, continue to edit here. Sorry, we're actually tethering off my phone right now, so it's kind of a miracle this works at all. There we are. All right, so what we have here is somewhat predictably a list of all of the courses. Time for a relationship here. Now this is going to be, well, let's have a vote. Who thinks it's going to be a regular relationship versus a reverse relationship? And what's regular relationship?
What's the
What are we trying to achieve?
Yeah,
reverse?
remind us the problem.
Reverse.
Reverse, yes, correct, thank you. The relationship that we need to put here in order to see what courses this is a prerequisite for is a reverse relationship. Because the field that's actually present on the course type is what its prerequisites are, but finding out what courses it is a prerequisite for requires pulling in data from things kind of pointing at it that it itself doesn't know about or isn't stored as part of the course content type. So we'll pull in reverse. Right. And you actually, with these identifiers, you can name them whatever you want. And administrative title is useful if you end up having, for example, multiple of the same relationship but with different delta values. So if you're trying to pull in the first, the second, and third author, you might obviously, because it's a reverse relationship, we don't have deltas here, but you could administrative title author 1, author 2. You don't need them here, but it's good to keep in mind so you don't get totally confused. So we have the titles of the courses here. Let's add the same field all over again, but with the I'll add the same field all over again, but with a relationship. All right. And a lot of these don't have prerequisites, so it's normal that some of these would turn out, or it's rather, some of these aren't prerequisites for anything else, so it's normal that they would turn out blank. But it's good to see that we're at least getting some values here, so far, so good. Let's see. Is everyone good on this so far? Should we keep adding things? All right. So let's add a relationship to let's see if we can get some information about the students. So we added reverse relationship for courses. Because this doesn't in any way tie to prerequisites, we don't need to, chain together the prerequisites relationship. This is just a different issue altogether. So it's just a relationship by itself. Let's start adding some students. We add content title again. courses, sort of like we did before. We'll get students. All right. And now we're looking at things sort of from the student perspective, so we can then add in information about the advisor using the same courses that jumps us to information about the students. And then we'll add content entirely again. Advisor. So as you can see here, we have on the field side, we have the in a certain sense the exact same field 4 different times, but we get 4 different, well, up to 4 different bits of data back, just because we're using different relationships for each of them. All right. Any questions? Or imaginary case studies that you want to whip together here on the spot? This is the gist of everything that I did as the demo, so please, and you and
Could you put an expiration date on these? Obviously, say the classes aren't in session during the summer, could the views then change based on a date criteria?
Yes, so what you want to do is add a date field, and then in the filter you can do nifty things like date is greater than or equal to now, or date is in the past. You'll be able to create things like listings of past courses or listings of upcoming courses. You just have to be sure that you actually have the data there as part of the courses, but you can, with these filters, set them to things like now or a specific date or, plus 3 months, things like that. Yes?
So we have committee members, and each committee has its own page, and I would like to list the committee members on that page without having to, like you say, hard code the actual. So does that involve something more than this?
So are your committee members, where is the data stored about who's on what committee? Is it part of like people's profiles?
It isn't because they aren't users, but they could be. But right now they're just members of a list of members of executive council.
So where's,
And then each of them are on one committee or another.
where's the data stored about like who's on the committee? Is there like a field for like,
They're just knows individual names right now.
and so how do you know what committee they're on?
Because in the note, there's a listing for a committee.
Okay.
List each committee.
Okay, so that actually, you don't need a relationship at all. That would be the same as the really early version that we did with the listing of students in a class. So if we just add a new view real quick.
Or you use the content filter.
Yeah, so you do a field for committee,
Oh,
and
can I
then
use the URL for the page?
no, what you do is say fixed value, and here, here's a little here. This is not gonna be right, but let's say you pick the field where like the listings where it would say what committee they're on. That's your contextual filter. For you say then provide default value. And the type is content ID from URL. So even though the content ID isn't actually going to appear in the URL, it'll still work.
So then if they're on a certain page,
Then what you do is you put this block on the committee page,
right,
and it should pull in the names of everyone who in the field that says what committee they're on refers to that committee. Yeah, let me know if it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought that I had to do something, I guess that's
This should be,
URL.
this should be it, yeah.
So does the page name have to be the same?
Yeah, this content ID from URL is kind of misleading, like, so long as it is on the page, that is the page that is being referred to on the node where the user says, you know, I'm on committee A, B, C. If you're on the page for committee A, B, and C, it'll show up even if.
But doesn't that have to have sort of the same name? I mean, how's it gonna identify?
It just has to be, when you did the node reference, it needs to be referring to that node. Usually it means that the page name is the same, but, yeah, I mean, you can, there's some fancy styling things that you can do where it might not always be the same thing. But so long as there's a node reference and it's pointing to the right thing, it should show up.
I'll try that.
Yes?
Have you covered, I got here a little bit late, but an example of how you auto-populate a reference field? So for example, if an instructor wanted to fill in an assignment for a class, and it was an assignment content type, they could go to the class and just click on a button, create a new assignment, and that would be it. Content type would already be populated. The assignment content type would already be populated with the correct reference field. Is that something that you've dealt with, or?
Not as such. I'm trying to think of, so are you trying to sort of like auto-create, like there's 30 students in the class, like auto-create 30 nodes?
No, just one node.
One node?
So let's say you're in the class page node, and you want to create a new assignment for that class.
Mhm.
So I mean, you could just go to content types and create an assignment, and then fill in a reference field from the assignment to the class.
That's probably what I'd do.
But in some cases, it's good to do it the other way, where you don't want the user to have to choose. You basically want them to be on the class and click a link, and automatically they've created an assignment.
Within the, yeah, I've never run a site that's needed to do something like that. So I imagine there's probably fancy things you can do with context, but context isn't actually something that I've done a whole lot of work with.
Mhm.
Brian, have you ever done anything like that?
Not exactly that use case, no.
I mean, organic groups can do some stuff like that, where like if you're in a space, it'll automatically kind of create stuff that's associated with that space.
Right.
I mean, you could do dynamically create like a, the content of the URL, kind of thing.
There's a module, I don't remember what it's called, that lets you pre-fill a node reference or an entity reference field based on something in the URL.
Yeah, wouldn't that be auto-populate? Is that the?
I don't know, that might be it.
I haven't played with it yet, but that's what I'm.
I think it might have been something else, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
While we're on modules, there's a couple relationship modules I noticed. Have you played with those at all?
The ones that I've done stuff with, is less on the relationship end and more on the node reference end. I mean, I run a site that, for which it's been useful to have the node reference with auto create. That's been kind of handy, where you can actually sort of put in a node that doesn't exist yet, and it'll create the node according to like some sort of parameters you configure. But I don't think I've ever.
I think these create interim entities that sit between the two things that are related to each other. And let you do sort of more complex mappings, but I haven't really played with them either. I was hoping somebody could
Yeah, no,
suffer on my behalf.
there's a lot of interesting stuff out there, especially around like the entity reference rather than the node references itself. It seems like people are doing a lot of building on top of that one. And I almost wish I had more complex projects that made me dive in and learn them, since I can sort of get away with what I've been able to. Yeah.
I did one site that used the relation module,
Mm-hmm.
and the relation module, a relation is the thing that's fieldable.
Right.
So you can have, you know, you have a relation that connects two things, and then you can label and have fields on that relationship, which it can get kind of complicated. But I didn't use it for anything that I couldn't have done with node reference or entity reference. It just seemed like fun, so it was a personal site, so I did.
And it worked fine?
Worked fine, yeah.
Yeah.
There's this Swedish site, node1.se, that has all these video tutorials, and they had one on relation.
Got it.
Yeah.
And to go back to your original question, I found the module I was thinking of, it's called pre-populate.
Yeah.
So that actually allows you to pre-fill based on something in the URL, any field, is that right? Any form field that is set based on its name. It's a bit of a quirky module, but you can fiddle with it and probably take care of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Any other questions, thoughts, concerns, panics? Do you want to switch to general Q&A, Brian?
Yeah, or we can, basically that's fine, or we can just kind of call it a little bit early. I mean, I think it was a great, concise demo, and a lot of times it's, it's a matter of actually playing with this stuff. And so there was, in case you missed it, I did follow up on the postings with a Dropbox link to her database, and everything you need to bring up the same site on either another Pantheon site or your local stack to mess around with.